All right. Hello and welcome to our Friday Expert Livestream. I'm Dan Johnson, Chief Consultant here at Next Level Nonprofits, where we help new nonprofits get started right. My dog just opened my door behind me, so this should be fun. Thank you, dear. Um, so thanks so much for joining us for yet another Friday Expert Livestream. We got an amazing live stream coming up. Of course, if you are new to this stream, couple of ground rules. Number one, above this, there should be a link, streamyard.com/Facebook. If you click on it and sign in, when you leave a comment in the chat, we will see who it is, and I can actually call you out by name and give your question to Alesha. If you have a question at any point during this expert live stream, please drop it in the chat, and I will highlight it on screen. We'll be able to see it here when it comes up. And of course, as I said, I'm dying. And of course, if you like and love this expert live stream and love Alesha, she's actually got a cool freebie that she's going to give to you in the middle of the show, but only if you're watching in the middle of the show. So really excited to bring her on. And of course, please like, comment, and just say how much you love this content so we can keep doing these kind of things. And I can keep bringing experts like Alesha on. And with no further ado, we'll bring Alesha up to the stage. I have known about Alesha for probably 3 years at this point, just because she's such an active admin in all the nonprofit groups. I need a graphic designer to give me to give Alesha like a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, protecting you from like Fiverr and scammers, and it's just she does such a great job there. She's also the author of I Have My 501c3, Now What? A detailed plan guide. I should have read the book description for what to do with your nonprofit after you get your 501c3 status. She has a serious passion for new nonprofits, and I'm just excited to meet her and to have her on the Friday Expert live stream. Thank you so much for joining us, Alesha.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. I enjoy interviews.
I usually enjoy giving them. So we'll see. But our first question that we always start out with is, you have 15 years in the nonprofit space, but not everybody chooses the nonprofit space as their place to go. So talk to us. What made you decide to get involved in this crazy nonprofit space?
I answered a job ad. It's as easy as that. I had been in real estate. That was right before the real estate bubble burst back in 2008, something like that. And my mother had seen the advertisement in a newspaper, and she said, "I think you would do good at this." And so I said, "Well, what else do I got to do?" Right? So I, not knowing a thing about nonprofits, really, I went and applied, and I became the administrative secretary to the executive assistant to the ED. So a little further down, but that was really where I got to see boards and structure and how they operate. I think you're muted.
That sounds both exciting and mind-numbingly boring at the same time.
It was actually very fun. But then once, in nonprofit work, usually if we're there about 4 years in any particular position, it loses its challenge. And so we have to move on. And so I wound up at another larger nonprofit in the development department as marketing and PR. And I fell in love. I was totally in love with fundraising. So I learned a lot about fundraising. And then after that, I spent 4 years there. After that, I went to another nonprofit where I was in programs and learned all about programs. But fundraising was always my passion, and it was a really small nonprofit, and I knew what the big boys were doing, and they use the low cost, no cost stuff too, and I
Mm,
would go to the ED, or the executive director, and say, "Hey, I can help with this. I can do this. We could do this." And it would just explode the fundraising. And I was told that fundraising was not my lane, to stay in my lane. And so that was when I was like, it's not really what I want to do either.
Well, before we jump off this lane, what were some of the things that you implemented at these organizations that just exploded the fundraising?
Well, I learned at the other well, the first organization didn't have a fundraising program at all.
Mm. They
They
operated
were
off of hopes, wishes, and, angels' wings?
they operated off grants.
Okay.
So, but I saw where that is a huge pitfall too, because grant funding gets cut, funders decide that they want to go in different directions. Things happen, and layoffs were often in that
Mm.
because funding, they didn't
The ups
diversify
and
their funding.
downs of the grant funding. Okay.
Right. Yeah, they didn't diversify their funding. And then in the fundraising department, that's really where I learned fundraising. So it was at that small nonprofit that I started going, if we just had email, an email service provider, and we sent emails out, once a quarter, it would boost fundraising. It would, we can grow our donor base, because that was something they were lacking. They did the thing that most new nonprofits do, and that is grants will fund us. And they were going after grants, and that's about all they were going after. And it was like, we need to diversify. And that explodes your fundraising, when you're small, going out into the community and getting speaking gigs. And if it's not the founder, then someone on the board that enjoys doing it. There's always one, you know, um, have them going out, because that was one of the things that I did in fundraising, and it was nothing to go out and get $100 for an hour's worth of work. And then you had donors for life, and then they opened doors for you, because I would also get, hey, I have a bunco group that meets every Thursday. Would you mind coming and speaking to them? I really liked your message, or whatever it was. So then it started opening even more doors. And I've heard this from other executive directors over and over, that, over the course of maybe 2 or 3 years, it can triple your fundraising just doing that.
That's amazing. That's awesome. One of the other things that you did when you kind of came out of the direct service nonprofit space and started into the consulting side is you created the Nonprofit Founders Club.
Mhm.
And you created it. You had an interesting statistic in your bio, and I've been looking for statistics like this, so I'm curious where that comes from. But you had 50% of nonprofits fail within their first year.
Yeah.
Um, so talk to me a little bit about that statistic and why, because when you see people start a nonprofit, usually it's not a like buying a Netflix subscription or something like that. Oh, I'm just going to pay for this thing and I forget about it and all of a sudden it comes back. These people are putting in 10, 20, 30, 40, 80, 100 hours a week into this organization, and yet in a year it fails. So what are some of the things that you've seen cause that?
Well, I actually sat on a new nonprofit board, and I didn't totally understand when I sat on the board what was going on, but the experience fits the statistic, because within a year and a half they were closed. But you have infrastructure that you need in place in order to fundraise, in order to support, funders getting, wanting to fund you. Because for a funder, you're an investment. And there are certain things that you really do need in place in order, as far as infrastructure goes, in order to be able to really get that funding. And so that's the biggest thing, I think, because we were on that new nonprofit board, we were on the event hamster wheel. I was the only person on the board that had any kind of nonprofit experience whatsoever. And so they're thinking that fundraising equals events, and that's the only thing fundraising.
Right. You hold a gala or something like that, and you spend all this money, and you hope you get it all back, and then some from the people.
Right. And I find too that new nonprofits, they're on that flavor of the month fundraiser. Every month it's like, what we have to have money. How do we get money? And if you're not,
we sell popcorn is one of the things I've seen pop up a lot.
Well, and when you're starting out, you have to start small, but you can't think small forever. So I try a fundraising letter that it doesn't matter how small or how big you are. I mean, I've written fundraising letters for larger company or larger nonprofits, and I would get $80,000 in on the first, and then the follow-up was $120,000. So that's something that can grow with you. And so I kind of tend to want people to start kind of with an introductory appeal letter. But then if you get the money in, you still have to have that infrastructure to be able to handle the money, record the money, give the acknowledgement letters out, all of that to be in compliance with your tax exemption. So that's what I do. And my steps are: you build your board. Most start out with 3 board members because that's what's required. But your bylaws may say more than 3. So you need to build out your board. And then we're going to do a strategic plan. And a strategic plan helps you understand who you are and where you're going. And so we're starting to learn about the organization. Then we look for the tactical plan, which is the annual plan, and your general operating budget. There are so many out there that do not do a budget. And that is a basic that you have to have. We talk about policies and procedures because there are certain policies and procedures you need, especially for the 990. So let's go ahead and get those in place. And then we need, money handling policies and procedures. And then we get into the fundraising where, we talk about the ideal donor and how to figure that out. And most people want to give you it's 10 pages long, and I've got it down to a page. I know what the important stuff is you need to know. Then we build our website and our social media, our online presence. You can't do that until you know who you're trying to attract, which is your ideal donor.
Yep.
And then we really start getting into the fundraising basics. And that's my plan. That's how I help you build that infrastructure that you need. And when I was coming up with this, I'm also looking at grants and what they want and what they're looking for. And what I've built in is what grants are looking for. Oh, I forgot your programs in there too.
Which is a good segue to the topic of today. No, that's fascinating, and we'll have to bring you back to talk a little bit more about that individual fundraising, because it really is hard to get those new nonprofits going. And once they've got a stream of donors, then it's just a matter of growing that and talking to those people and talking to their friends and getting references and having those meetings. But today I wanted to deliver on what we had promised for the people, which was creating your signature program. So, the program that a nonprofit does is kind of the heart and soul of how it actually accomplishes its vision. Right? And this program, and I am seeing everyone's comments, by the way. I know we were having issues with that last week, but I see everyone's comments in here. Actually, Facebook user, because they haven't registered with StreamYard like I told them to, says that's a good breakdown here and the order things should be in. So we'll definitely bring you back to talk about that. But let's talk a little bit about programs because they're the heart and soul of a nonprofit. You can have the biggest visions and dreams and everything like that. If you don't have a solid program to actually carry that out, you're gonna have a really hard time actually making that happen. So can you talk a little bit about what is a signature program? We'll start there. What is a signature program and why do you need one as an organization?
Okay, so your signature program is the program that you are going to get known for in the community. And it's important that this is your first program because it's probably going to be your longest lasting program. It's going to be deeply, deeply connected to your mission. And a lot of times, any subsequent programs that you have will grow out of this signature program. So it is the program that you are going to be known for many years to come. So it's important to build this right and build it so that it is deeply anchored into your mission so that it stays relevant.
That makes a lot of sense. So, and being really, really tied into that impact that you want to create.
Mhm.
This is kind of your core thing. So, how do you sit down and figure out what is your core thing that you need to be doing for the community? I think a lot of people start out very organically. So, a good example.
Mhm.
One of my first mentees, long, long time ago, was a organization called Serve Inspire. There's this young man, Blake, in Austin, Texas, who he and his family literally they didn't like Thanksgiving dinners. It's just not their thing, but they got invited to lots of them. So what they decided to do was plate up the food and go bring it to homeless people in Austin.
Mhm.
And they did this on a yearly basis, and they started to see the impact they were having on those individuals and wanted to see greater impact. So theoretically, they could just take that and have a holiday feeding program for the homeless in Austin be their signature program. Is that the best way to do it? Just roll with what comes organically, or how do you actually come up with this core signature program for what you're
Well, a lot of times the signature program does come from something that you're already thinking about or starting. You know, it's the thing that's going to fill that gap that you're seeing out in the community. And so that's really where you start is just looking at what gaps do I need to fill and why did I start this nonprofit to begin with? What's the heart of it? And that's where you come up with the idea. And then you're going to look at, what other people are doing in the community and how your program is going to be different because you really have to understand how you are different. That helps you with funders, it helps you with individual donors. Just knowing because, people have choices. If you're doing something very similar, they have a choice. They can go with you or they can go with someone else. So why should they go with you?
How do you figure out how you're different? I know that you could use Google, and some of the things that I've suggested in the past have been like go on Google and look at it from the person you're serving's perspective. If they're looking for this service, who comes up? But how do you suggest people go out and figure out what other services are out there when they're creating their signature program?
Well, most of the people that are in my audience, they have a calling or they have been through this. So
Mm,
they've been through the system. They know where the system broke for them, that and so that's not really something that I have to think about. Um, but I would do that Google search. I'd see what else is out there. If you find something similar to what you're thinking, go volunteer with them. Find out
mm.
what they're doing and how they do it because you may see a gap that they're not filling. It may become very apparent to you. Um, And so that's what you're doing. You're just trying to figure out what the gaps are, because that's where you want to fill.
That makes a lot of sense. So, all right, you figure out where the gaps are and kind of determine, okay, like another one of our clients, Food Rescue in Florida. There are large, I mean, food distribution and food for needy people has been a charitable endeavor since we started charities in the United States, like
Mm-hmm.
in the 1800s. So there are lots of very large organizations like Feeding America, things like that, that go and distribute food, but typically people have to come to them to get it. And there's not a way for people to, in their communities in particular in Tampa, there was not a way for people to get the food if they weren't willing to come to or able to come to the food bank.
Mm-hmm.
Elderly, seniors, parents, single parents with children,
Yeah.
things like that. So that was the gap that they filled. So you figure out the gap in your community of what you're filling. Then what?
Well, then you sit down and you start really thinking through the program. And there's three key elements to a program that you have to have. And so the first one is your eligibility requirements. I know we're all in nonprofit work. We have big hearts. We want to help everybody. But the reality is our resources are finite. And so we have to figure out who those people are that we can help the most. Who are we best suited to help within our idea? And so that's really important to sit down and start thinking about, who's going to qualify, and sometimes it's age. Like if you have a youth program, you want to define what ages youth is. If you want to do income, a lot of nonprofits will use like 120% of the poverty level, and that's defined in the census. So you can use those kinds of things to qualify people into your program. So that's the first thing. The next thing that you want to do is to make sure that you are really thinking through that implementation. One of the things even large nonprofits get wrong is that they don't have an end to the program. It's a perpetual program. And funders don't want to see that. They want to see, how do I know that I've completed the program? How do I know that you as an organization have done what you said you were going to do? Whether that's making them productive citizens in the community, or you're just helping them be stable, whatever that is. How do you know when you've gotten there? And so this work plan, this action plan, really starts laying out for you how you go about doing that in your program. So you start with where you are at qualification, and then I suggest what's the halfway mark for you? What does that look like? And then how do you know you're graduated? How do you know that they are no longer eligible for the program because they have gotten the outcome that you're looking for?
Could you
And
give an
then,
example of that for, say, a real program? What does it look like to get from point A of entering the program to point C? What's considered a graduation point, so to
okay,
speak?
the national program Meals on Wheels. So you have certain qualifications, usually homebound seniors, and then at certain intervals throughout this time, you have someone going in and measuring, are you getting better or are you getting worse? And there comes a point in time where, if we've helped them with healthcare, if we've helped them with, nutritious meals, maybe, they've lost some weight and now they don't have to worry about certain medications or whatever that is. And now they are well enough to not need our services because they're not homebound anymore. You know, or maybe they deteriorate to the point where we're not the ones to help them anymore, and so we refer them on to other programs that are more suited. So that's it. But it takes going in, I think it was like every 3 or 6 months, someone going into the home and having this checklist to evaluate where they are, and then from there, we can even recommend more services if we have additional services, or someone else's services. But because the goal is to get them not homebound.
Okay. Yeah. So, something I've seen a lot with new nonprofit leaders is they struggle to figure out who are the people that they are best suited to serve.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend kind of a try out different things and see what makes the most sense, or do you recommend you mentioned age, so I
Mm-hmm.
imagine age, geography,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, age, geography. I'm trying to think income. So age, geography, and income would be 3 areas to look at. Um, Anything else that you recommend to help someone who's just very much in the I want to help everyone all the time, narrow down to that specific group that they're able to help without narrowing down so far that they lose access to funding and interest? Because if I'm like, I only help people named Bob, age 54, there's only so many people who are going to actually support that.
Right. Yeah, it's a balancing act. Well, age, and then the income, and what was I can't keep those 3 in my head. Those are
Geography.
typical. Those are
Okay.
typical. But let's say that the program you have in mind is for women or for men. They're gender specific. Or I think in today's terms, it's sex specific. But anyway, um, defining what that looks like, because it's not clear in today's society sometimes exactly, you know, because I've had people or founders that are setting up, domestic abuse or housing for addicts and stuff, and you don't want, men and women to commingle. You need them separate, and they have different issues,
Mhm.
things that they need to work on. And so that would be something, if your program is specific
Yep.
to that. So, after you get those 3 down, it really depends on looking at what you have in mind, and how, you know, really thinking through, who are you really trying to help here? If is it both sexes? Is it one or the other? If uh, youth, what that looks like. We've just those kinds of things. It really gets down to being very specific with your program.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So you have the qualification, you have the kind of halfway point, and then you have the graduation point. Do you recommend any specific kind of metrics or metric tools? Like I know everybody uses in the nonprofit space who's been in it a long time, they use program theory.
Mhm.
And pretty much everybody who's outside of the nonprofit space goes program what?
Yeah.
So are there other elements to this outside of, qualification, halfway point, graduation to creating this signature program?
Yeah, you're going to build in your metrics,
Okay.
in this process too, because you want to know what how what does success look like. you know so maybe that is surveys to your clients, asking for, you know Well, like on Meals on Wheels, for instance, yearly the clients get surveys that ask them, how has having meals helped, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you feel like you're better off or worse off? Have you quit taking medications, in the last year? All of these things, which, you can go back and say, relate to the program. And so those are the kinds of things you're looking at. You're looking at, how many people get to the halfway point? How many people graduate? Those are the metrics that you're looking at, because those are also metrics that if they aren't meeting your expectations, you need to go back and look and see, okay, what are the real problems here? Why aren't people getting to the midway point? Because you might have something in there that is an unidentified need that you can fill.
That makes a lot of sense. We're going to be back with Alesha in just a couple of minutes. She's actually going to have a giveaway for you as soon as we bring her back. So stick around for that giveaway, and then we're going to get into some of the pitfalls that people find when they're creating their signature program and some of more of your suggestions for that. All right. Wish I had a pre-recorded ad to do this, but I'm just going to do this on the fly. If you are listening to this broadcast, you are listening to Next Level Nonprofits. That is a consulting firm that I founded in February of this year with one goal: help you get started right. I've watched too many nonprofits start and fail because they fail to understand what about a nonprofit makes running a nonprofit different than, say, starting a business or running a different, program outside of the nonprofit space. So we start with your foundations, your mission, your vision. I think your vision statement is the number one thing that makes you different. It is your profit and loss statement. It is how you determine what makes you successful and impactful as opposed to another nonprofit. So we start with your vision statement, then we go on to your mission statement, then we go on to your values. We call this your North Star. We create your North Star to help partners, funders, and volunteers understand exactly what you're trying to do and get them on board with your success as an organization. Then we help you get filed with the state and with get your C3 status with the federal government. And then we help you get your first $50,000 and get the system set up that brings that in. Once you go from there, fly, be free, and go talk to someone else about bringing your fundraising past that point. Our mission is thousands of new vision-driven, impact-focused professional nonprofits entering the space over the next several years. So if you're interested, head over to nextlevelnonprofits.us. It's nextlevelnonprofits.us. Book a no obligation call with me. We'll chat for 30 minutes, get to understand your nonprofit and how we can help. And we'll bring back, I want to call you Dr. Mathis because of how much information you have, but you have a freebie giveaway for our leaders who are listening in today.
I do. Let me put that in right now. There you go. It's in the comments. And it is a worksheet to help you build that nonprofit. And it includes the 10 common grant questions. So if you build it this way and you implement it, then when it gets time to write the grant, you're going to have the information right there at your fingertips, and it will make it so much easier.
That is fantastic. And of course, welcome to Makara and Krista. I now see both you guys listening in. Thank you for registering with StreamYard, Makara, so I can actually see you come through here. But it's great to have you guys, and Krista, of course, great to see you again. So we were talking about developing your signature nonprofit program, and you went through some of the specifics about how you actually go and do that. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen new nonprofit leaders run into when they go and start to create this signature program?
Well, most of them have never seen a program on paper. So that's the first thing is, And that's why I have a template and all of that to help them with putting one down on paper. Budgets are always a problem. No one wants to write a budget. So, but we have to have a budget. And that's one of the things that we build into the program is a budget. And even if it's the first time, I hear all the time, but what numbers do I put down? Well, the first budget, no matter if you're talking about a general operating budget or a program budget, it's a guess. But you can go out on the internet and look at prices of different things and say, how many of these am I going to need in a year? And you can get a very educated guess. And this is really important too, because people donate to specific things. And so if you know exactly how much this program is going to cost and exactly how many people that you want to have in this program, you can figure out your unit, what's it called? Unit of service, cost of the unit of service. That's what I'm trying to think of. And that is a great number to know in fundraising, because it can be your basis of all your asks. So if you know that one person going through your program, it's going to cost $25, then you can say you can help one person go through this program for $25.
Or that is a heck of a cheap program.
Yeah, that is. But, having that number available to you really helps them know that they are giving to something specific, and it helps you have that baseline to ask from. And then when you have a budget, if you put in, here's a little grant tip. If you put in, even if you're volunteer, the amount of volunteer service, so the number of hours for volunteers, and then what the market rate would be, the fair market value would be. Then whenever you go to a funder, you can say, this is how much the program costs to operate. But because we have volunteers, we don't need this part. So you're only funding this percentage of our budget. And that helps, because just like founders, funders, grantors, they don't want to be the sole funder either. So it helps.
That makes a lot of sense. So something that I've seen in nonprofits that are larger is they tend to ask for more money than it actually costs to do it. They have I've seen anywhere from 20% operations, essentially overhead thing that they put in there, to 50%. And do you have any recommendations for a new nonprofit about making sure that you, on one hand, don't ask for so little money because you're trying to get discounts on everything, that when you inevitably can't get a discount for something, you can't actually pull off the program, or not to the extent that you were hoping. And also, I think it would be somewhat unethical to ask for 100% increase in the money that you think you need to hold on the program, and then put the other 100% in general. So what is your thoughts around including enough overhead costs or operational costs in your budget to make sure you're actually able to put on the program?
Well, if we're talking about a general operating budget, most financial advisors tell their clients that if it's 20 to 25% of admin costs, don't touch them, don't donate, don't. So that's something when you're thinking about your general operating budget to keep in mind, because that's the standard that people are being told. It's not a good nonprofit if it's between 20 and 25% or more overhead. In the program budget, I would put down every single cost at the maximum amount. That's
Mm.
how I do it. And then when I get the cost per unit of service, then I'm building in extra because, if there's a part of the program that I know I'm going to get donated, I'm going to get in kind for, that's great. I get to save that money, but it's still a cost that I would have to pay if I didn't have it.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it.
That's interesting that financial advisors will advise their clients not to donate to a nonprofit that has over 20% overhead.
Mhm.
Uh, I'll have to do probably a blog on the overhead myth at some point, because it is one of my pet peeves about nonprofits. This whole idea that you can't have overhead, otherwise you're somehow misusing funds. Um,
Well, and that's because there have been organizations where the leadership has misused funds, and
yeah,
and that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and the rest of us have to deal with it. It's not
yeah,
fair, but it's the way it is. But yeah, there's a TED Talk video, Panella. It's been around for ages, but it talks about the overhead myth and how we shouldn't be asking nonprofits to cap, their overhead. And he lays out some reasons not to. But the reality is, until we can change the donors' minds and the community's minds, it's not going to happen. And
that's
I
fair.
don't
And
know.
that's go
I
ahead.
don't know how we can do that.
Interestingly enough, I've found, and maybe in the spaces I've been, it does depend on the space, but like in the think tank space, for example, I
Mm-hmm.
found just being upfront with the donors and being like, look, this is what it costs to put this all together. Sometimes we need staff to do it because we need it done right. If we're going to have a research paper, we need somebody who's actually going to be informed about what they're doing.
Right.
I've been upfront with every donor that I don't split them. Overhead is part of actual money that you need to make it happen, and this is what it costs to do the program right. I've not usually found them to be turned off by that, but that's also an individual conversation. So it is a balancing act.
Right. And they have to know, like, and trust you to have that conversation. And if they trust you, then it's not going to be a problem. But that's the problem I think the industry as a whole has,
Mm.
is maintaining that trust with donors. And like, you are changing donors' minds. And like I said, that I think is the only solution. We've got to start informing donors and changing their minds.
Yeah, I mean, an analogy I've used before that I would drop here for people is right now the charitable sector broadly is looked at as the Walmart greeter for the Salvation Army. I'm nothing against the Salvation Army and only a couple things against Walmart. But the mindset is I'm going to throw my spare change at you and I'm going to feel good and you're going to go do something with that money and I hope it is a good thing. The mindset that I'd love, and this is a tangent, but the mindset I'd love people to start having about the nonprofit sector is I'm going to invest in you because you are going to deliver this outcome. And that's the
Mhm.
outcome I want. That's the mindset we have when we invest in business. It's the mindset we have when we call for more taxes is
Mhm.
we want this outcome. We're going to help the homeless. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's not just we want to feel good. And a big part of ensuring more money is going to the nonprofit sector and people are actually trusting the nonprofit sector is setting it up as here's our programs, here's who we're going to help, here's how we're going to impact them. And yes, we have the stories and all of the amazing testimonials, but at the end of the day, we're about impact and that's why you're investing in us, not we're begging you or asking for money so that you can help out the poor nonprofit and just feel better about doing that.
Right. Well, that has to happen. And our part as nonprofits is that we have to make sure we are doing the numbers for the impact. We are giving concrete evidence of our impact, which is what you build into your program so that you have those numbers. So yeah, you've got to have that impact as a nonprofit to present.
So when you're designing those impact metrics, one of the things that I've heard is a success rate. So you figure out what your graduation goal is and you have a success rate going through the program. Doesn't work for everybody. But that's one thing I've heard. What are some of the better metrics to be using, and how do you maybe figure that out to reflect what your program is actually doing? A lot of nonprofits will say we gave out X amount of meals, for example, or we
Mhm.
held X amount of soccer events for kids. Are
Right.
those good impact numbers, or what impact numbers would you recommend?
Those are impact numbers that we often throw out to donors, but the meals. What a step further is through our program and through nutritious meals. We've had X number of clients be able to come off their blood pressure medicine or their diabetes medicines, which in turn has impacted the healthcare system because we don't have those people now going to the hospital. So I think sometimes we can start with those numbers, but we have to go a step or two further to really connect the dots for both individual donors and grantors.
That's true. That's a good point. I remember when we were doing disaster relief a long time ago in Hurricane um, Irma and Maria. A certain organization, which I will not name, was giving out meals
Mhm.
for disaster relief, and I think they consisted of a biscuit, a single baby carrot, and a like snack bar and a glass of water, and that was their meals. And so when they went out and they're like, "We did 200,000 meals this week, and we gave them out," it's like, it is better that the people had your baby carrots than nothing. That's nice. Is it fair to call it a meal? I don't know. You could debate that. My toddler might eat more. So having that, well, but did that resolve their insecurity about hunger, or did that um improve their nutrition? Did that get them through the day? Did they not have to get another meal because you were able to get that to them?
Right.
Kind of these, what is the actual impact on the people we serve kind of numbers seem to be what you're getting at.
Right. And, in that instance, it could have been, how many after having those meals were able to go back out and help more people in the community,
Mm,
because it really comes back down to what impact you're having in the community. The donor wants to know, how are you making my world better? The grantor wants to know, how are you making your community better? And so we really have to start going a step or two further and really looking at how the community is better. If we're providing jobs, that's great. But let's talk about what impact we're having on the economy now that we've got people working. You know, those are the outcomes and the impacts that I think most people are looking for, that are looking to invest in your program.
that's a really good point. When I did program evaluation with my previous nonprofit, Um, the thing we split impact into was three pieces: short term, so the graduated once they
Mhm.
finish the program; long term impact, they're no longer in your program, they're no longer receiving your services. Has their life gotten better? because you actually made an impact on them instead of just serving as. And not every nonprofit is, needs to make a long-term impact. Like disaster relief, sometimes just get it done and get it out of the way. But in a
Right.
lot of cases, you want people to be better off because you serve them, not just while you're serving them. So
Right.
short term, long term, and then community impact. What is the impact of people who've never been in your programs, who are in the community? What do they feel because of the work that you have done?
Mhm.
And there were not many nonprofits that paid any attention to the third, and only about half of them paid any attention to, maybe less than that, to the second. A
Right.
decent amount of them maybe covered the first, but what does it look like in the short term and the long term and in your community?
Mhm.
That I agree with you is kind of what donors seem to be investing in.
Right. And that's absolutely what grantors invest in. Because, they have people to answer to too. And they have to be able to say, yes, we invested in this nonprofit and this is what they're doing in the community. Because they don't, they like the individual stories, the client stories for the feel goods, but that's not really what they're interested in. They want to know how their dollars impacted the community.
And if you guys, this has been an amazing conversation with you so far. If you guys have any questions, I'm seeing them all your comments in the chat here. If you have any questions for Alesha, please toss them into the chat. I think I just may have missed mentioning that midway through. If you have questions for Alesha, we'll have her for another few minutes. So please toss them in the chat so that she can get to answering them. But Alesha, why don't you take a minute and talk a little bit about what your resources are, from your book to all of the various octopus arms you have that are helping out nonprofits. Talk a little bit about those.
Okay. So, well, I have the book, I have my 501c3, Your Blueprint to Building a Nonprofit Without Being the Sole Funder. Long title. But we go through the steps that I mentioned earlier in the book in a lot more detail. And then from there, I have built the Nonprofit Founders Club, which we have a Facebook group. I have my website that has articles and freebies and everything on there. I don't mind the DIYer, so I make sure that you have resources to help you. And then, of course, I have mentoring, which is one-on-one mentoring, and I have some new things coming in 2024. But mentoring is my staple. And so I sit down and talk to you one-on-one, and we really go through what the challenges that you're facing and get some action steps down to really help you hone what needs to be done and how to solve your problem. But the group and the website, they're all about the 8 steps that I've talked about and getting you the information that you need to be able to get these things done so you can get to actually helping people. And I come in after the 501c3.
That makes sense. So Makara is coming at you with a very broad question. What is the top thing you see nonprofits struggle with, and what are some solutions to that?
It's probably a tie between fundraising and boards. Those are the 2 common things I hear. So, funding is always a problem. And if you're in nonprofit work, it doesn't matter if you are small or large, that's always going to be a concern. And so, it's 3/4 of all contributions come from individual donors, no matter what size your organization is. So building that base is paramount. And the problem with fundraising is that it's not a quick and easy, it's not. It takes time to build those things. So So that can be a struggle, especially when you're starting out. And then the boards, how do I get people on? How do I make sure that they're going to work and not flake on me? Those are the other things. And for me, a good vetting process, and getting out into your community and always be on the lookout for that person that might work on your board, and having those relationships. In nonprofit work, relationships, no matter if we're talking funding or boards or anything, it is the cornerstone of what you do. And then with boards too, how do I make them work? Well, you set your expectations early in the process of vetting. You remind them of the expectations, and you hold their feet to the fire. You make them accountable. That's how you do it. There's good ways to do it. There's bad ways to do it. But that's how you have to do it, because people are people, and they're going to do whatever you allow them to get away with. So
Yeah. Oh, that's very true. Cebus, one of our most active group members, says she wants to thank you for helping connect with so many awesome people. Her impact is teeny tiny right now. She is just getting started. How does she tell the community that they are impacting it in a positive way when she doesn't currently have the data to back it up?
okay, so you're at that phase where you are vision casting. You are telling people, this is who we are. So you have to know who the organization is, who we want to help, and the vision of the community with us in it. What does that look like with us in it? That's really where you have to start, because you don't have the numbers yet. Once you start getting the numbers, you can start adding in, not only do we have this vision, but now we are actually, achieving this vision. But yeah, you have to be a great vision caster at this point.
Entirely agree. If you can get people excited about what your vision for the future is, a lot of nonprofits tend to talk about what they do. What you do is a tool to achieve your vision.
Mm-hmm.
That funders don't really give a crap about what you do, as long as, or whether you do it. They're happy to choose organization A, B, C, D, or U, who is going to carry out this vision in the community. And if you're able to cast that vision really well at the beginning, people will invest in you. 100% people will invest in you.
Yeah.
Um,
And use your passion. I mean, founders are so passionate about their organizations. Use it, because it's contagious. I have known founders who are working their regular jobs, and they go working about their daily lives, and they're talking about their nonprofit. They're talking, and it's natural conversation. It's not pushy. And, I had one founder come to me, and she says, she was a physical therapist, and she would talk to people, about her nonprofit during her daily work. And she said she would have people go here and hand her, $25 check, or, because they got to know that vision, and they got to know her. And it was like, I want to see this come through for you. I want to help you. And that's another component. They've got to know you, because your first donors, you're building loyalty to you and to your board members. And then you start building loyalty to the organization.
That makes a lot of sense. And Makara says, this has been a wealth of knowledge. And Terry out in Washington said that that was her question as well, that she was asked. So it has been wonderful to have you on, Alesha. Thank you so much for coming on at the kind of the very beginning of this expert live stream process. So for everyone who are listening in, every week at noon on Friday, we keep doing these. I announce them on Monday so that you can get signed up. And then on Friday, we do the live stream in the group. you know of other new nonprofit leaders that this could help, thank you guys for your likes, your shares, your comments. Any reactions help us fight the Facebook algorithm and make sure people in the group actually see this. But if you know of anyone else, any other nonprofit leaders who could benefit from these live streams or other resources, invite them to the nonprofit launchpad. We are growing this group rapidly. Right now, it's about 10% every week. So super excited to have you guys all. Super excited to be bringing you this. And of course, Alesha, thank you so much for joining us. You guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next Friday for an expert that we have not yet figured out who it's going to be. So put in the comments what you'd like to know about, and I will pick someone off our list and see if they can make it next Friday. You guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you later.